rates to €300 a week. Taoiseach Leo Varadkar says price caps would only result in many companies going out of business.
To be very frank, I don't think price controls are a good idea. They have been done in the past in Ireland. They didn't work very well. And while the government can cap what retailers can charge for a certain product, they can't cap what the retailer has to pay. So, for example, you might find that if you introduced a price cap of, let's say, 120 cents for petrol or diesel, that you'll just have no petrol or diesel.
The INMO has accused the Health and Safety Authority of failing in their regulatory function to investigate cases of assault. The Irish Nurses and Midwives Organisation told the Oireachtas Health Committee today over 5,500 cases of assault have been reported to the HSE between January 2021 and October 2022. It says just 446 cases were investigated by the HSA last year. Sylvia Chambers has been nursing for almost 2 decades and says there are thousands of instances of assaults that go unreported.
I want to be able to go to work. I want to be able to provide the care. I'm trained to do that. I take so much pride in my work, but I don't feel safe going to work.
Former Taoiseach Bertie Ahern has rejoined Fianna Fáil. A party spokesperson has confirmed it received an application from its former leader for membership, which was accepted. Our political correspondent Sean Defoe has more.
Bertie Ahern left the party in 2012. He basically jumped before he was pushed by Micheál Martin after the publication of the Mahon Tribunal, but he has decided to rejoin the party and that application has been accepted. I understand that he'll serve a year as a provisional member of the party without voting rights, but obviously it has tongues wagging around Leinster House as to what this portends for the future. Does Bertie Ahern see himself as a potential presidential candidate for the party in 2025? He certainly doesn't appear as done with politics as some people might have thought.
More than 11,700 people have been confirmed dead in Turkey and Syria following Monday's earthquakes. Several thousand others have been left homeless, forced to camp out in freezing conditions. Rescue missions are continuing to help find people trapped in the rubble. It's 7:02.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. See your Premier League team this year with daily flights to Liverpool, Manchester and London.
Mostly dry tomorrow with sunny spells, highest temperatures of 7 to 9 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette. Start your day in flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Now then, you're very welcome along. Stellar show coming your way this evening. We will be talking to Vincent Cunningham of The New Yorker about LeBron James. He's been writing about LeBron, who of course overtook Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's long-standing all-time scoring record last night. So Vincent Cunningham of The New Yorker is with us. We have Andy Dunn and Jerry Thornley on Wednesday Night Rugby. The Dream Team are here after 8 o'clock. Gavin Cooney of The 42 with us in the football show after 9. Plenty to discuss. 53106, the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Will O'Callaghan here in studio. Hello.
Evening, Joe. How you on?
To Offaly's finest.
Oh, is that now become my official title? Not sure if it's actually on the super there yet.
You insist on it
for
though,
YouTube. I didn't come up with this. I'm not sure exactly who came up with it, but
you're like Sir Ben Kingsley, who insists, or apparently doesn't, on the Sir being attached to his name. Yeah.
Dublin's finest also with us. Hello, Richie.
Richie not from Meath.
No. Adopted Meath person. Yeah.
Ooh. More competition in Dublin than Offaly, of course.
That's a fair point.
Do other people call you Offaly's finest? Has that become a thing?
I think aside from Off the Ball, appear to be the only corridors.
King of the Midlands.
That was a Neil Tracy thing, one of our former friends here at Off the Ball. Apparently he claimed I could walk around the Midlands and get a pint at any bar without having to pay for it.
Who is Offaly's finest?
Probably Shane Lowry.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Like he's Offaly's number one golfer,
Yes,
as it
fair
appeared
enough.
when he was on one of the league review programmes. And I think that's a more than fair title to call him Offaly's finest at the moment.
Fair enough.
We've lots of people in the arts and all that kind of stuff. But what, are you putting Dignan ahead of Lowry here? Lowry's won a major.
Long-term career, I think. I'm throwing Dignan up there.
Yeah,
Dirty shoulder to shoulder.
Throw him out if you want. I think on the Offaly Sporting Rushmore, as much as hurlers and footballers have done over the years, I think Lowry winning a major, winning other very important tournaments at WGC, even winning the PGA last year, I think he's right there.
Plus, you want longevity. He'll be at it for another 30 years.
Hopefully, yeah.
I didn't even mean sports person. I just was asking, who is Offaly's finest?
Throw it out to the text in 53106. I think we can still put Lowry top.
Okay.
Genuinely our finest, most beloved.
When you said the arts, who were we thinking?
Then we're talking about like Mundy, we're talking about that kind of territory. not absolutely massive. Aidan Quinn is from my hometown as well.
Is he? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. He was in quite a few decent movies along the way. Like we have had good people along the way, scientists and so on, but like for some bizarre reason, I think Lowry will always kind of rise to the top in the public consciousness as opposed to 18th century scientists who invented telescopes.
No, fair enough. We'll push on. So really good show. Vincent Cunningham of the New Yorker with us. Not every day you get the New Yorker on, but he's been writing about LeBron. I was making an interesting point. So LeBron in his 20th season has become the NBA's all-time leading scorer. The match stopped when he scored the points. There was full-on ceremony. Nobody does pageantry like the US. And Vincent Cunningham was making the point in his piece in the New Yorker that really there's been like an inevitability to this for the last 3, 4, 5 years. It's lacked any real suspense. There hasn't been much will he, won't he. There's been kind of a countdown to this. So it's kind of been a procession of sorts. But the interesting thing, which I hadn't fully appreciated, is that this record of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's was for a very long time.
Stood for nearly 40 years, Joe. I think it's 39 years this year. I think a lot of people thought that Kareem's record would never be beaten, given that some of the very best players in the history of the game, like Michael Jordan, like Kobe Bryant, went through and were still thousands away from the total that Kareem ran up. Now,
it was perceived to be unbreakable.
Yeah,
and that's
even taken into account. His first 9 seasons in the NBA, Kareem couldn't hit 3-pointers because he's from that era before the 3-pointer was introduced.
Yeah.
So that maybe makes Kareem's record all the more impressive. That you see how many 3-point shots are now taken on by players. Even Steph Curry is inside the top 40 at this stage, who is predominantly just a 3-point scorer. And LeBron has, since he left school and went directly into the NBA, run up some ridiculous numbers over the last 20 seasons. There's plenty of speculation as to whether he'll be going past the 9,000 mark while still in the vest of the LA Lakers at this stage. Okay. And that kind of made last night a little bit weird as well. I know, Richie, you thought it was strange that everything had stopped. There's something to me that I quite like the pageantry about US sports and that they keep the records so brilliantly that earlier today I could go onto ESPN's website and Chamberlain's records are all there from a bygone era. And they keep them so brilliantly. And even when Tom Brady was breaking records, they knew that they were coming. Yeah. But in a way, I suppose this wouldn't have happened in many other sports, Richie, where in a standard league game, they would actually stop the match for a few minutes for family and friends to come on the court and even Kareem to come on the court. And in the end, of course, the Lakers lost.
John Terry got it, I suppose. So that's kind of your standard bearer in that situation. I don't know. There's something about American sports whereby it's the triumph of the individual and the team is almost secondary. Like to that point, it will be a footnote that the Lakers actually lost that game last night. And I don't know, that's the kind of thing that always that throws me off a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm against it or anything, but throws me off a little bit in terms of American sports. The record keeping is fantastic, and more sports should have it. And the GAA are finally waking up to that here at home in the last few years and months. But I don't know, when you factor in they lost that match, it should take away from the spectacle of last night, but it absolutely won't. Yeah. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. It just is something that's out there in the ether. But yeah, the triumph, and it's through American football, it's through ice hockey. That gatekeeping and that record keeping all plays into the vaulting of the individual to be above the team, any team, no matter how good or bad they are.
The interesting thing is LeBron was quoted last year as saying that the scoring record was never, ever even thought of in my head because I've always been a pass first kind of guy. And this seems to be very much the case, as basketball aficionados will more than know. He is a creator. He is more of a Magic Johnson. He is 4th on the all-time assists record. So he was never destined to break this record.
I think LeBron can do both, and his longevity has been a big part of why he's well done. The amount of times he's gone long into the postseason, the increased amount of games, all these have been a factor along the way. But it meant an awful lot to LeBron. Like, I watched his interview earlier today after the match, and he was quite legitimately tearful, very, very emotional about the fact that he had broken it. And maybe a year ago, this wasn't even factoring into his mind. But maybe, as you said, there was the very slow tick down towards the number. Yeah. And therefore, he knew he was going to break it last night. It was fairly clear. It was 36 points he needed before the game. You thought LeBron is going to do that kind of number. Yeah. So therefore, he's likely to break it last night at the Staples Centre. And then everyone probably saw the picture as he was laying up. And absolutely everyone, except for the head of Nike, have got their phone out for their Instagram shot, as if there's not broadcast cameras and a million different DSLRs perfectly capturing the moment. It's like, I've paid however much I have to be in the bottom rows of the Staples Centre. I'm going to get my picture of his shot.
It's such an amazing image as LeBron's in the air and everybody has the camera phone up, and the majority are watching it through their camera phone to make sure they get the shot. Some, in fairness, are holding their camera phone up, hoping they capture it and watching it with their eyes. But the majority are watching it just like we did via a screen, except Phil Knight, who, though, by the way, before you give him too much credit, if you watch, there is a cameraman on his knees right in front of Phil Knight pointing a camera up at him.
Could well be Phil Knight's own cameraman going, I caught the one where I was watching it.
He's well aware he's being watched as well, and maybe
I think very recently LeBron and LeBron's son have both signed lifetime contracts with Nike as well, so I'm sure he was a happy man to now be able to say he's the top scorer of all time.
Well, he's saying, so as you mentioned, straight out of high school at age 17 into the NBA, he's saying he's certainly not retiring until he gets to play with his son, who is eligible for the draft as of next year. So we'll talk to Vincent Cunningham of the New Yorker about all of that. I guess the reason he's so emotional is, you know, if you think in the grand arguments about who is the GOAT, with Michael Jordan, people just say 6 titles. This is the comeback to every answer. And now LeBron has a pretty compelling response to that. So maybe all these things hit him. And I guess there must be a relief. Like, this has been, you know, you've been counting down for 3 and 4 and 5 years, but you're always one injury away from sayonara. So suddenly, imagine that moment of, oh my God, I've done it. Nobody can take this away from me.
Yeah.
And as we said, the pageantry was amazing. Family there, everybody on the court. Kareem was there. He was doing chats with Shaq via TV. All of this kind of stuff was happening. So
I like that. I liked when it happened with Steph Curry when he broke the 3-point record as well. And again, they stopped the game for a few minutes to let him have his moment and they move on. Compare that to, as Richie alluded to there, when Patrick Horgan broke the scoring records last year in the All-Ireland Hurling Championship, and people had to check the records, and it appeared he may well have broken it and people just didn't notice. And then 2 points, I think, were found in a match report, and they had to wait until the week after for it to happen. And it was all a bit bizarre. And those records are really, really, really badly kept. So therefore, we miss out on these moments that American sport, like ESPN have been talking about this record for a couple of weeks now, because they knew it was happening. Because they keep the record so brilliant.
John Terry. There was no record broken, lest we need reminding. There is a text in from John in Dublin who says replay stopping. That's regarding play stopping, not replay. Regarding play stopping when a record's passed. When Brian Lara set a new record for the highest ever test match innings in 1994, play did stop. Firstly, for an impromptu pitch invasion, and secondly, so that the previous record holder, Garfield Sobers, could go out onto the ground and congratulate Lara. So
true.
There's natural breaks as well, Joe, in these sports. So in basketball, like once it had gone in, obviously it's going to be a restart from the back line, so there's a natural break. In field sports, there's not necessarily that natural break in play. And similarly in cricket, like once the ball has gone to the boundary, you have to wait for the next ball to be bowled. You can take
that said, when David Clifford becomes the all-time championship scorer in GA history, let's stop the game. Let's make it happen. Get Paulie to make a speech. Paulie to make a speech. I think we want to hear that.
Shake of the hand, pat on the back of the head. On we go to the next play.
I know.
Killian O'Connor comes out to shake his hand.
Absolutely.
That's my record.
The Newsround brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. There is Premier League action this evening. Not on television. Not on television. People are disgusted. No.
Yeah. You've just forced people to go find other ways and means around that tonight, Joe. Leeds go to Manchester United in the Premier League tonight without a manager. Michael Skubala is in temporary charge following the sacking on Monday of Jesse Marsh, with Leeds chairman Andrea Radrizzani saying the club need more time to find a replacement, not helped by Carlos Corriban signing a new contract at West Brom last night. Manchester United made 3 changes. One of them enforced. David De Gea starts in goal. Diogo Dalot replaces Aaron Wan-Bissaka at right back. Rafa Varane and Lisandro Martinez are their centre-half partnership, with Luke Shaw on the left. Marcel Sabitzer comes in for his first start in place of the suspended Casemiro. He plays alongside Fred in midfield. Alejandro Garnacho takes the place of Anthony on the right wing, with Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford in support of the big man. Wout Weghorst. For Leeds, Ilan Meslier starts in goal. It's a back four then of Luke Ayling, Pascal Struijk, Robin Koch and Max Weber. Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie and Jack Harrison are in midfield, and they have a front three of Lewis Sinisterra, Patrick Bamford and Willie Gnonto. A visit from Leeds, meanwhile, is the reward for tonight's FA Cup 4th round replay winners. League One Sunderland welcome Fulham to the Stadium of Light, where kickoff is at 7:45.
This, as I understand it, not on television. It was postponed owing to the Queen's passing and therefore fell between the rights.
Yep, I think the games from memory that day, Liverpool and Chelsea was used to be the half-4 game. I think Arsenal and Brentford, from memory, is the 2:00 kickoff. Because I remember we were due to have both of them on Off the Ball, and I just remember that week we were kind of thinking, are we going to have to cancel one or two of the commentaries? And Leeds and Manchester United was obviously affected because of the policing around the Queen's funeral, which was the reason that was
right.
So it would have been, I think, the 2:00 game on the Sunday. So that's why it's on TV.
Okay. So Gordon Elliot had his hearing, Richie.
Yeah, he's been fined £1,000 after one of his horses, Zanahiyr, tested positive for a banned substance. Zanahiyr has also been disqualified from its third place finish at last year's Cheltenham Champion Hurdle. Saint-Ouen instead takes that place. A sample taken after the race showed traces of the banned local anaesthetic 3-hydroxylidocaine. Elliot said afterwards that he's relieved at the finding of the disciplinary committee today, finding a low level of culpability. An investigation of Elliott's yard last April found no indication of the drug being present, nor was it administered by his regular vet.
Okay. Full disclosure, we've chased a few racing journalists to come on and explain this situation and put it into context for us. Just people's schedules thus far not quite agreeable, but we'll hopefully get someone on the show in the second hour just before 9 o'clock to come on and explain the Gordon Elliot situation. Andrew Conway, bad news for him?
Yeah, rough news today for Conway, who could miss the rest of the season. The Munster and Ireland winger underwent knee surgery last week and he'll be out for between 3 to 4 months as a result. Conway missed last summer's tour of New Zealand and hasn't played this season due to ongoing knee issues. In better news for the province, Orgy Snyman is nearing a return to action for Munster as he increases his training load this week. It looks like it will be after the Six Nations when the big lock will return.
Conway just one of these interesting cases when it comes to Ireland, in that when he was fit he was in there and playing very well. And
Flying the Six Nations 2 years ago.
Flying, and yet you're quickly forgotten in the current era.
Yeah, and he's been very unlucky because obviously that knee injury then I think had a setback, which meant that he never got back going this season, and now effectively with 3 to 4 months out, that's going to put him out for the rest of this campaign. But Snyman coming back in, they'll just be hoping that they can ease him back in for the business end of this season, because he's been the really, really unlucky one over the last 2 years to get so little rugby into him for who is effectively a world-class talent that they brought in to be a difference maker for Munster.
So Damien Comer went down over the weekend, Richie. It didn't look good. The news is better than expected.
Yeah, seems to be relief for Galway football manager Padraig Joyce with the news that Damien Comer doesn't require knee surgery. Stretchered off in last week's Alliance Football League Division 1 defeat to Roscommon. It's now hoped that Comer will be fit in time for Galway's Connacht semi-final in April, which will be against either Roscommon or Mayo, but he's out, it seems, for the remainder of their league campaign.
Johnny Sexton talking today?
Yep, despite an underwhelming win over Italy last weekend, France are expected to name an unchanged starting 15 for Saturday's Six Nations clash with Ireland. Fabien Galtier, though, is expected to reintroduce Francois Cros and Baptiste Couillou to the replacements bench for that game. Yesterday, James Lowe said Ireland will attempt to use their fitness to get past the sheer bulk of France. Sexton didn't dispute that tactic today, while also planting seeds of potential French indiscipline.
Yeah, but they're definitely bigger. You can see that clearly. So we need to play. We need to play quick. We need to, have clean ruck ball. That's something that we haven't had against them over the last couple of games. If you saw how many people they threw into the breakdown last year in the Stade de France, and sometimes illegally, sometimes legally. They've got some outstanding poachers. They push the boundaries definitely. But look, they're, like I said before, they're a full package team. They don't really have any weaknesses. So for us, we got to play to the best of our ability and see where that gets us.
Sometimes legally, sometimes illegally. That is my abiding memory of the game in Paris. Just the carnage at the breakdown and these huge men in blue jerseys causing havoc. We have Andy Dunn and Jerry Thornley on the way after 8 o'clock. We've spoken to the guys already.
They are incredibly upbeat.
Worryingly bullish.
I could see your face, not to give too many spoilers, but people may well have streamed it earlier today, when Andy said 10 to 15 points.
Yeah. And
just looked at you and went, no, 10 to 15 points.
I know. I was hoping for, by hook or by crook, a point or two in it, Ireland will come out on top. He was, 10 or 15.
Is this something about the Irish psyche, though? That we worry when Ireland are in a position of strength and favouritism going in? Because I winced a little bit watching some of the TV coverage, not necessarily your good self last weekend, but watching the English coverage.
How dare you?
And we had the ITV.
Say what you want to say.
And they were talking Ireland up massively on the ITV coverage, and I was kind of thinking, this is mildly uncomfortable. Surely everyone's meant to be saying, this is a World Cup year, this is where the wheels are meant to come off for Ireland, and all this is meant to focus the mind. And now even when we hear our own Irish pundits saying, do you know what, actually, at the weekend, the first 30 minutes, Ireland were innovating. And I was looking at the way that they were moving the ball around from the ruck and the way they were putting pressure onto the Welsh front row, and you're just thinking they were pre-planned moves that have just worked really, really well. Injuries haven't been too unkind, even though the two guys had to cry off before the game. Generally the guys who come in have done well. There's no reason to be pessimistic as an Irish fan going into this weekend whatsoever, and that's even without Jameson Gibson-Park, who's been so key for Ireland for the last year. There seems to be that feeling, well, Conor Murray played so well last week, it'll be fine. I prefer to be a little bit worried the week of a game. I know what you mean. I mean, I just did it there, so I'm talking about myself as well here. The whole, they were worryingly bullish. I think it's increasingly that attitude is becoming a bit tiresome. Any very fair, sober analysis is that this team are really, really, really good. Number one in the world, not for no small reason. They have a great chance of winning the Grand Slam. They have a great chance of winning the World Cup. May not happen, but that's a fairly... So much of the World Cup comes down to we're not jinxing ourselves by saying that at this stage. There's so many of the world's top 5 teams who are on one side of the draw within the World Cup. Yeah, the draw sucks. And that's by the nature of World Rugby wanting to make draws 3 and a bit years out from a World Cup. It's kind of silly. But at the same time, if Ireland are going to win, they're going to probably have to beat France, South Africa and New Zealand along the way. There is no other option. Yeah, and they may not have to beat South Africa. They can lose to them in the group stages. So then beat the All Blacks and move on. And we'll probably have to beat France in the final if it is All Blacks. But again, you kind of boil it down, and if it wasn't France in France, you'd feel a lot more buoyed by that. The New Zealand thing, I'm very worried about how good France will be later in the year when their players are back, though. On this one, they've lost a few key players and they're definitely experimenting currently. I think everything has been geared since 2016 for France to be 100% going into this World Cup. And even though they were great in winning the Grand Slam last year, I think they will be at peak form when the World Cup comes around. That's the big danger about them. But is this not a reason to enjoy rugby going into the World Cup? The fact we're going to have 2 or 3 really heavyweight matches on one side of the draw. And why can't Ireland be in peak form? Why not? They've done everything right over the last couple of years. Blind faith, but why not? I said it's not blind faith anymore. So US boxing, this is a pretty interesting story, Rich. Yeah, USA Boxing is to boycott this year's women's and men's World Boxing Championships. American representatives are unhappy with the leadership of the International Boxing Association, the IBA, and its controversial president, Umar Kremlev. The IOC have already stripped the IBA of organising rights for next year's Olympic boxing tournament. Championships take place in March in New Delhi, with the men's 2 months later in Tashkent. They will have no bearing on qualification for next year's Olympics in Paris. This is just a wild story, this tug-of-war now, which is ongoing. So the International Boxing Association, akin to FIFA or any other major global sporting organisation, has effectively been hijacked by Russia. It's being heavily funded by Gazprom, which is one of the issues that the International Olympic Committee have, is where the funding is coming from. I think their funding base would fall to bits if Gazprom were to pull out. I don't know yet what kind of team Ireland are intending to send to the World Championships, or whether they're intending to send one. And Sean McGoldrick was making that point on Twitter a bit earlier on, that was maybe Ireland now, in solidarity with the USA, could well end up not sending a team to these World Championships. And as Richie mentioned, it doesn't have huge implications, because the tournaments at the start of next year are more important when it comes to Olympic qualification rather than what happens in the in-between year, which is 2023. So it would be a much bigger deal if America decided to boycott the games when qualification was on the line, say, next year. Okay. Cricket then? Yeah, Ireland are going to go into the Women's T20 World Cup on a high following this morning's victory over the world number 1 side, Australia. Laura Delaney top scored for Ireland with 32 as Ed Joyce's team won their final warm-up match in Stellenbosch by 3 wickets. Ireland's opening Group B game of the World Cup itself comes against England. That is on Monday. Okay, a few last stories. Hugo Lloris. Yeah, he's going to miss Tottenham's Champions League last 16 tie with AC Milan. The former France international has been ruled out for up to 8 weeks with a knee injury. Step up Fraser Forster. And Richie Murphy has made just one change to the Ireland under-20 team for Friday's meeting with their French counterparts at Musgrave Park. Henry Mackerlane starts at fullback in place of James Nicholson. And Steve Borthwick has decided to axe 3 members of the England matchday squad that lost to Scotland for Sunday's visit of Italy to Twickenham. The head coach has trimmed his panel from 36 to 29, with Ben Curry, who
started at open side last weekend, left out entirely. Ben Young's got 21 minutes off the bench against the Scots. Anthony Watson, also a second half replacement for debutant Ollie Hassel-Collins. They're also ditched by Borthwick this week. Alex Mitchell, Henry Arundel and Henry Slade are back in contention after missing out against the Scots.
Okay. Meanwhile, Formula 1.
Yet the controversial president of motorsports governing body, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, has stepped down from day-to-day management of F1. The FIA says the move was pre-planned, with the head of single-seat racing, Nicolas Tombazis, taken over. It has emerged recently that Mr. Ben Sulayem made misogynistic remarks 20 years ago, while a spokesperson claims that does not reflect his true beliefs.
Okay.
So you see very few sports administrators now, Joe, who don't have the moniker controversial before them. It's a recurring theme. It could be any of Richie's scripts from the last 2 years.
Yeah.
4 years, maybe.
Yeah. It's true. Does it attract a certain type of person, sports administration?
I don't know. That can be up to the listeners. But I suppose if in any political corridor and political circle, you're probably going to have to be ruthless in a way to get to the very top.
LeBron James says James and Cork doesn't get the credit he deserves for his life off the court. For one of the greatest athletes of all time, there's never been any controversy with him. For me, this makes him the greatest athlete ever, says James Cork. Is that true of LeBron? There's no whiff of...
Greatest athlete is obviously a huge debate in itself, but from the off-the-court stuff, he seems to have a big social conscience, LeBron. He donates a lot of money back towards his home area, particularly. I think he's built schools there to make sure that disadvantaged children are able to go to school. So there is that feeling that LeBron is one of those American athletes who's got a real eye on where he's come from and hasn't forgotten his roots along the way.
A very good cameo in some movie a couple of years ago where his acting was surprisingly good.
Space Jam?
No, it was like a dating.
Space Jam is terrible.
Like the movie was formulaic enough.
It was the one with what's her face? Oh God, it's going to annoy me now because I saw it in the cinema and
it was decent.
Was it Walk of Shame, something like that?
Could be. Yeah. He produced Adam Sandler's.
Is it the Australian actress, comic actress?
No, she's. You're thinking it's.
I'm thinking of Pitch Perfect.
This is brilliant radio.
You keep thinking there, Richie. I'll try and do a very quick check here. But he was very, very heavily involved in the really, really good Adam Sandler Netflix basketball movie as well.
Okay, suffice to say, Richie, he was good in that movie that we.
He was in
of.
it, yeah. It was. No, it wasn't Walk of Shame.
Hustle was the one that he produced. He was in the Redeem team. He was in
Trainwreck.
Yeah.
Trainwreck. There we go.
Trainwreck.
Yeah.
Much better than expected. Pete Malloy on sound called that one.
Oh,
well done, Pete.
Well in, Pete.
Doesn't rate Kenny's movies, but he rates your selections with LeBron making a cameo.
What was the movie Kenny was recommended again that we all panned?
Equalizer, I think, was it?
Equalizer.
Not Equalizer 2. Kenny was very keen to stress outside the office.
Whatever.
It has to be Equalizer 1. Whatever. Bit of Denzel.
Lads, American sports are just decades old. We really do fall for the Americans and their marketing schemes. Clever people. I think they're very consciously leaning into those moments. You know, they're not trying to pull something underhand. They're making a big deal out of it. So I don't think we're falling for anything.
Also, like what? Codified sport this side of the water is like 1880s, 1890s for the best part, versus 1950s for the USA. It's not that big a difference, really.
No, I wouldn't think so. So is the sense, well, we're going to talk about this in just a moment anyway, is the sense that this record akin to Kareem's, this will stand for a very long time? There's nobody on the horizon who's going to break this?
There's not too many modern players who are inside the top 20 at the moment. When I look at the list earlier on,
Steph Curry in the
39 he's at the moment.
39?
Yes, he's well back
with all those 3-pointers.
Yeah, but even when you think of LeBron being a really complete player, really good rebounder, really good assister, he's got, like, his game is magnificent. He still scores a lot, as this has shown.
Yeah.
Obviously he carried the scoring can for Cleveland for a long, long time as well, where he didn't maybe have the players around him. Miami, he probably wasn't scoring as much because he had the weapons around him, but still so impressive. To do it over 20 years is amazing.
It sure is. Okay, fellas, we are pretty much out of time. Richie McCormack, thank you.
Nice and gents.
Will, thanks.
Cheers, lads.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
So, special cash machine this week. One simple amount for you to remember across the week. This Friday, someone guaranteed to win €75,000 exactly. Text play to 57557. Get your entry in by 3 o'clock on Friday. And then across the Go Loud network of stations, Barry Dunn will make the call. If your phone rings, answer within 5 rings. The exact amount in euro and cents, and the cash is yours. So remember the amount, €75,000. Over 18s only. Text cost €2.